people. As soon as the President of the United States took office, he issued a mandate to rid America of the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. Thanks to his leadership and direct engagements with China, we set up a framework to execute that mission 8 months ago. Attorney General Bondi immediately thereafter took steps to engage her counterpart in China at the Ministry of Public Security. Pursuant to their direct discussions, as the FBI director designated to run counterpoint on this.
At 5:14 a.m., the first line hit the microphones inside a federal briefing room in downtown Houston. Today, we dismantled a cartel trucking empire operating in plain sight. By 5:17 a.m., the numbers were already on the board: 46 coordinated targets across Texas logistics hubs and border trucking corridors, 31 arrests, 9 fugitives identified, 14 commercial warehouses breached, 2 covert transload yards shut down, and more than $38.6 million in bulk currency and digital assets seized before sunrise. But the most dangerous number wasn't in the money. It was the count of routes. 72 repeating lanes, mapped, timed, and protected, running through Laredo, Pharr, El Paso, and up into Dallas, San Antonio, and the industrial belt east of Houston. Routes that moved like clockwork. Routes that didn't just carry narcotics, they carried certainty. And federal agents called it the largest cartel logistics infiltration discovered on U.S. soil in a decade. Because this wasn't a street gang with a stash house, this was a supply chain. And when you understand what that means, the next part gets worse. 4:32 a.m., near the back edge of a freight park outside Laredo, Texas. The sky was still black, the air heavy with border dust and diesel. Sodium lights flickered over long rows of trailers, like tired eyes. The place looked asleep. Until it didn't. A line of black SUVs cut their headlights and glided in, behind them, unmarked vans. Then the final layer, matte black armored trucks, slow and deliberate, like they owned the pavement. FBI, DEA, ICE. Local SWAT teams folded in like joints in a single machine. No sirens, no shouting. Just doors opening quietly, tactical boots touching gravel, and the low hush of radios as teams split into strike elements. To the viewer watching this later, it would look like a movie, but for the men inside those vehicles, it was a time-sensitive math problem because the cartel's trucking network didn't move randomly. It moved on schedule. Every minute mattered. Every delay meant another trailer rolling out with a sealed door and a signed bill of lading. At 4:35 a.m., the first breach team stacked on a corrugated steel side entrance labeled office. The only sound was the distant groan of an idling refrigeration unit. Then, bang. A flashbang punched white light into the building's dark interior. The door folded inward. Agents poured through the smoke like shadows turning solid. Inside, a front office with cheap coffee, a wall clock stuck at 2:11, and a ledger book laid open like someone had been writing when they heard the approach. Through a hallway, another door. Another breach, another room. And then it hit them. Not the smell of marijuana. Not the chemical sting of methamphetamine. It was something worse. Cold. Metallic. Clinical. They found pallets, perfectly wrapped. No brand markings, no stray powder, just uniform boxes stacked in a way that screamed professional handling. An agent sliced one open. Inside, fentanyl pills. Not baggies, not bricks. Pressed tablets, packaged like consumer goods. A second pallet, cocaine. Vacuum sealed, stamped with a fictional logo designed to look like a legitimate export mark. A third, heroin, bundled tight and labeled with counterfeit inventory codes. This wasn't hiding narcotics. This was distributing product. At the same time, 4:38 a.m., another team hit a driver lounge off a different yard. A low building with neon beer signs and a dead TV playing static. The cartel used it as a pressure point. Drivers waiting for loads, drivers getting paid, drivers getting warned. The door came off its hinges. Men ran. One tried to escape through the back with a duffel bag so heavy it swung like an anchor. He made it 3 steps before a federal agent dropped him hard onto the floor. The bag popped open. Stacks of cash. Rubber banded. Still smelling like printer ink and sweat. A third strike element, 4:41 a.m., crashed a warehouse in the Rio Grande Valley that everyone in the area thought was just another produce operation. The sign outside said cold storage. Inside, the truth was warmer. A hidden room behind insulated panels held a makeshift packaging line. Heat sealers, scales, press molds, shipping labels pre-printed for destinations across the country. A Cartel superlab doesn't always look like bubbling glassware. Sometimes it looks like a shipping department. Agents ripped through shelving and found more methamphetamine packaged into long flat parcels designed to slip between legitimate freight loads. Cocaine, hidden in false flooring. Fentanyl powder wrapped inside industrial plastic and labeled as adhesive compound. And then the night escalated. 4:49 a.m. Near a private yard outside Far, Texas, agents hit what the case files called a migrant staging house. But it wasn't a house. It was a converted office trailer with barred windows parked behind a chain-link fence. ICE agents led the entry. The air inside was stale and thick with fear. People packed into narrow space. Silent eyes trained on the floor, listening for the next sound that decided their fate. A few looked up when they heard English. A few didn't move at all, like they'd learned movement was dangerous. This wasn't just narcotics. This was human trafficking and migrant smuggling treated as a side business, used to fill the same logistical lanes, used as camouflage, used as leverage. The trucking empire didn't only move product. It moved people. 5:02 a.m. outside San Antonio, a team raided what looked like a small accounting office in an industrial strip. One sign, frosted glass, a flag in the window. The kind of place you drive past without seeing. Inside, agents found counting machines, ledgers, and a wall-mounted safe that required 2 codes. They got it open. Bulk currency, gold bars, burner phones, and tucked behind the cash, in sealed steel boxes, encrypted hard drives, and a thin black notebook with a handwritten header. Lane control. That's the moment the raid stopped being a bust and turned into a war map, because the lane control pages weren't drug counts. They were schedules, truck numbers, trailer IDs, driver names with payment amounts, port of entry timing windows, and notes, cold, simple notes that showed the cartel's confidence, scale closed, maintenance, patrol shift swap, green lane, inspection slowed, supervisor handled. Federal agents had seen corruption before, but this read like coordination, like permission. And that's when the first twist landed. Hard. One of the encrypted drives wasn't just encrypted. It was government grade, not military, not classified, but built with the kind of discipline you don't see in street-level crime. A senior D agent in the room said it out loud, almost like he didn't want the words to become real. "This isn't a cartel safe house operation," he said. "This is infrastructure." 7:18 a.m. inside an FBI cyber forensics lab. Houston field office. Fluorescent light. Clean desks. Quiet. Tension. Analysts slid the seized drives into isolated systems, air-gapped, monitored, guarded like evidence that could bite. A whiteboard filled with dates, target names, and arrows like a storm forecast. The encryption didn't crack quickly, it fought. And when it finally broke, it didn't reveal a single spreadsheet. It revealed a blueprint. A network diagram populated itself across a screen, nodes linking to nodes, companies to companies, accounts to accounts. It looked like a living organism, pulsing as the system rendered. The internal name on the top banner wasn't Cartel. It was a project title, Project Long Haul. A fictional name, but a perfect one. Because what the screen showed was not chaos. It was a highway system designed for narcotics. Shell companies registered across multiple states. ghost corporations that existed only on paper, sham charities with warm names and cold balance sheets, fake nonprofit foundations helping communities while laundering millions, restaurant chains that never had customers but always had deposits, logistics firms with clean websites, clean trucks, and dirty cargo. And the money. The money didn't move like drug money. It moved like corporate finance, split, delayed, disguised, routed through offshore accounts, returned through equipment leasing, consulting, fuel reimbursements, green fleet modernization grants, and security services. It was money laundering with spreadsheets that looked like business. Then an analyst zoomed in on a command node. One account linked to dozens of payments. One signature key appearing again and again, like a fingerprint. They called it the authorization. And that's where the name surfaced, quietly like a blade sliding out of a sheath. Mateo El Contador Soria. Not a cartel boss with gold chains and a social media page. A cartel logistics boss. A trucking empire kingpin. A man whose power wasn't measured in gunmen. It was measured in freight capacity. His network didn't need to win shootouts, it needed to win contracts. The files showed him approving lane schedules, authorizing driver payments, coordinating clean trailer swaps, and approving the use of migrant smuggling routes as decoys when heat tightened on narcotics corridors. But the most alarming thing wasn't Soria's control. It was who else had access to the same system. In the log files, buried in the metadata, another digital key surfaced. A second authorization pattern. Not a cartel nickname. Not a street alias. A civic credential, a fictional high-ranking official, someone who did not look like a criminal in public. Governor Alton Creedmoor of Texas. A polished voice. A flag pin. A law and order brand that played well on television. And now, in a federal lab, his authorization key appeared beside trucking routes, tunnel references, and enforcement timing. An analyst stared at the screen and said the line that ended the illusion for everyone in the room: "This is not corruption. It is command-level collusion." Because negligence doesn't create lane schedules. Negligence doesn't time-waste station closures. Negligence doesn't place paid drivers on the same corridors at the same hours week after week, while interdiction units somehow always miss them. This wasn't a few bribes. This was engineered treason, built into the movement of the state. And when the FBI agent in charge realized what the data implied, he didn't talk about arrests. He talked about an eradication operation. Because when a cartel controls logistics, you don't just arrest a few men, you cut the arteries. And the next phase was already in motion. 2:56 a.m. the following morning, an operations command center outside Austin. Before sunrise again, a giant digital map filled a wall. Texas spread out in glowing lines, highways, rail spurs, ports, border crossings, overlaid with dozens of pulsing red markers. Each red marker was a target connected to Project Longhaul, warehouses, trucking yards, dispatch centers, maintenance depots, a fake tire recycling business used as a transload point, a security contractor office that issued escort passes, and a private driver training school that was really a recruitment pipeline. Every dot was a piece of the empire. The room was crowded with federal uniforms and clipped voices. Over 1,000 federal agents assigned across the operation. Dozens of SWAT teams. ICE tactical units. DEA strike squads. AITS coordination. Black Hawk helicopters positioned for fast movement and aerial overwatch. Armored vehicles staged for high-risk entries. And for the viewer who thinks this sounds too big to be real, understand what triggered it. This wasn't a typical drug bust. This was a cartel logistics network that moved tons of narcotics through legitimate corridors, protected by a parallel system of influence. That requires overwhelming force. At 3:31 a.m., the first wave launched. At 3:52 a.m., the raids multiplied. In El Paso, a warehouse disguised as a furniture distribution center, agents found a hidden tunnel entrance behind stacked pallets leading toward a concealed corridor used for cross-border movement. Not a cinematic tunnel with lights and rails. A practical tunnel. Dirt walls, reinforced beams, air hoses, A tunnel built by people who planned to use it for years. Near Corpus Christi, a portside logistics firm with clean paperwork and dirty containers, agents found altered shipping manifests, tampered seals, and a server rack humming behind a false wall. The server rack wasn't just communications, it was dispatch control, the nerve center that told drivers when to move and when to wait. Outside Dallas, a Rich Hills mansion, not a cartel hideout with graffiti, but a drug fortress wearing the clothes of wealth, marble floors, quiet halls, a garage with luxury cars. SWAT breached the front while a second team climbed the rear wall. Inside, hidden rooms built into the architecture, safes, firearms, night vision, body armor, and cash, stacks of it packed into storage bins labeled like holiday decorations. At a desert edge industrial site northwest of San Antonio, agents hit what they believed was a maintenance depot. It was a methamphetamine processing hub, more industrial than chemical, more packaging than lab, but the output was the same poison. At a rural highway junction, a migrant smuggling convoy was intercepted mid-transfer, vehicles moving in coordination, drivers using coded radio language, a lead car acting as a scout to spot law enforcement. It didn't work. Federal units boxed them in, fast and decisive. At 5:46 a.m., a second wave rolled. By 6:10 a.m., the seizure totals climbed. Not just cocaine and heroin and fentanyl. Not just fentanyl pills, but rifles, pistols, drum magazines, suppressors, encrypted phones, radio repeaters, and server farms, small clusters of machines set up in places you wouldn't expect, designed to keep the network talking even if one node went dark. By the end of 6 hours, the underworld took more damage than it had in the last 6 years. But the real shock was still waiting, because when federal investigators began combing through the seized servers, when they laid the data out like evidence on an autopsy table, the network didn't just point to cartel members, it pointed to badges. 10:22 a.m. inside a secured federal evidence bay. Rows of hard drives sat in sealed bags, printed call logs, financial statements, patrol records, internal emails. Agents started matching timestamps. A convoy passed through a corridor at 1:40 a.m. A way station shut down at 1:35 a.m. For maintenance. A patrol grid shifted at 1:20 a.m. A supervisor approved the shift change at 1:12 a.m. And then, like a shadow stepping into light, a pattern emerged. Dozens of officers and officials were compromised. Border-adjacent deputies receiving monthly payments disguised as security consulting. A handful of state enforcement coordinators pushing patrol units away from specific lanes. 2 municipal judges accepting favors in exchange for quiet dismissals, traffic stops that should have become interdictions. A legislative aide paid through a sham nonprofit foundation. An internal operations planner, someone who had access to schedules, feeding raid windows to the network so loads could be rerouted. This was not a few dirty cops. This was a second enforcement system. A parallel police force controlled by the cartel's logistics boss and shielded by political power. And in the middle of it, the name kept reappearing. Mateo Soria. His operation didn't just pay men to look away. It paid men to move pieces, to shape reality. In a small interview room, a veteran officer, clean, tired, furious, sat with hands locked together and stared at the floor. He didn't cry. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, "We were walking into ambushes we didn't know were set." That's the betrayal that kills morale. Not bullets. Not threats. The realization that the system you served was being used against you by someone wearing the same uniform. Arrests followed. A senior sergeant taken into custody in a parking lot, still wearing his duty belt. A deputy chief picked up quietly at home before he could destroy evidence. A logistics enforcement liaison, someone who attended security meetings, walked out in handcuffs while neighbors watched from behind curtains. By afternoon, federal prosecutors were already drafting sweeping conspiracy filings. And the message from investigators was clear: the badge will be rebuilt from the ground up. But the story doesn't end at the Texas line. Because a trucking empire is never only local, it's designed to scale. By the third day, analysts zoomed the map out. Texas was the hub, but the routes stretched like veins. Trucking contractors linked to distribution points in the Southwest, the Plains, the Midwest, and the coastal ports. Fake green energy grants used to modernize fleets that were never meant to carry solar panels. Agricultural routes used as cover, produce runs that were actually narcotics runs. Shipping lanes through port cities where containers changed hands without anyone asking why. The network could move tons of narcotics per week without triggering alerts, not by evading law enforcement, but by blending into the normal noise of commerce. Shipping manifests were altered digitally before loads arrived. Weigh stations closed for repairs when convoys passed. Inspection staffing was thinned at key hours. And migrant smuggling and human trafficking weren't just side crimes, they were shields. If you can overload the system with human crises, you can slip product through gaps. That was the logic. That was the cruelty. Then came the final file. A catastrophic phase plan sitting in an encrypted folder, an internal blueprint that wasn't about the next month, but the next decade. It described turning Texas logistics hubs into a permanent headquarters zone for the cartel's U.S. distribution wing. Not a hideout, a headquarters. A shadow government of contracts, grants, influence, and controlled enforcement built so the cartel didn't have to infiltrate forever. It could simply operate as if it belonged. And that's the chilling realization. The system wasn't just compromised, it was redesigned for the cartel future. And now the final question, one that lands like weight in the chest. How many people drove past those yards every day, never knowing what was moving behind those trailer doors? How many families buried someone lost to fentanyl, while the network that fed it looked like ordinary business? How many neighborhoods broke apart because methamphetamine arrived on time? Every time, like a scheduled delivery. Power doesn't always need open violence. Sometimes it only needs silence. Ambition, and a few people willing to sign papers they know will hurt strangers. This operation, this takedown, is not just a story about narcotics and money. It's a warning about what happens when organized crime stops acting like a gang and starts acting like a corporation. When a drug cartel doesn't just sell product, it builds systems. When a Mexican cartel-style logistics network doesn't just cross the border, it integrates into the economy. And when a cartel logistics boss like Mateo Soria doesn't just buy protection, he buys control. If you're still watching, tap like so more people see this story. Because public attention is pressure, and pressure is what forces cleanup when the headlines fade. And comment expose if you want this corruption dragged into the light until every compromised badge, every fake charity, every ghost corporation, and every protected lane is gone. Because the most dangerous cartel operations aren't the ones you can see. They're the ones that look normal, right up until 4:32 a.m., when the doors come off their hinges